When you went quiet longer than she expected, something very powerful happened beneath the surface. Most people don't realize this, but attraction isn't built by constant talking, explaining, or proving yourself. It's built in the emotional space between interactions. She expected you to reach out. She expected a message, a reaction, maybe even frustration or desperation. That expectation gave her a sense of control and predictability. The moment you didn't follow that script, her mind lost its footing. Silence wasn't weakness, it was a disruption. And disruption is what wakes emotions up. When a woman believes she understands how you'll behave, her emotional brain relaxes. There's no mystery, no challenge, no tension. But when you suddenly remove the predictable response, her subconscious starts working overtime. She begins to ask herself questions she never planned to ask. Why hasn't he contacted me? Did I misread him? Is he moving on? Is he talking to someone else? Those questions create emotional investment without you doing anything at all. You didn't convince her of your value. You let her discover it by feeling your absence. Your silence sends a message far stronger than words ever could. It tells her you're not emotionally dependent. It shows you don't need reassurance to feel grounded. Most men, when faced with uncertainty, rush to talk because silence makes them uncomfortable. You didn't. That instantly separates you from the majority. It signals confidence, self-respect, and emotional maturity. Even if she can't consciously explain it, she feels the difference. Her attraction isn't logical, it's emotional, and emotions respond to strength, not explanations. What really unsettles her is that she expected time to weaken your presence in her mind. Instead, time magnified it. The longer you stayed quiet, the louder her thoughts became. Silence creates space, and space allows imagination to run wild. She starts replaying past moments, remembering how you made her feel, questioning whether she took your attention for granted. This internal replay strengthens emotional attachment far more than constant communication ever could. You became a question mark instead of a closed book, and question marks are irresistible to the emotional brain. There's also an ego element at play. When someone expects attention and doesn't receive it, it challenges their self-image. She may have believed she had more influence over you than she actually did. Your silence quietly corrected that assumption. It wasn't aggressive or dramatic. It was calm and unbothered. That's what makes it so powerful. You didn't try to prove anything. You simply lived your life without chasing validation, and that forces her to reassess your value. Another important factor is emotional contrast. When you were present, your attention had meaning because it could be removed. Now that it's gone, she feels the contrast between having access to you and not having it. Humans are wired to feel loss more intensely than gain. Your absence creates that sense of loss, and with it comes curiosity, regret, and renewed interest. This isn't manipulation, it's natural psychology. You didn't create drama, you created distance, and distance restores balance. Your quietness also communicates boundaries without saying a word. It tells her that access to you isn't automatic. You don't chase people who pull away, and you don't beg for attention. That boundary commands respect. Respect is the foundation of attraction, especially long-term attraction. Without respect, interest fades. With respect, curiosity grows. She may not like the feeling initially, but she can't ignore it either. The key is that your silence wasn't filled with bitterness, anger, or hidden agendas. It was calm, grounded, and centered. That's what makes it effective. If silence is driven by ego or punishment, it feels heavy and forced. But when it comes from self-respect and emotional control, it feels natural, and that's what unsettles her most. She can sense that you're not waiting around, you're not watching the clock, you're not desperate for an outcome. You're simply focused on your life. In the end, going quiet longer than she expected didn't push her away, it pulled her inward. It shifted the dynamic from you chasing clarity to her chasing understanding. Her mind can't handle it because uncertainty removes control, and control is comforting. Your silence removed comfort and replaced it with curiosity. That's where attraction lies. Not in words, not in explanations, but in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his worth and doesn't need to announce it. When you maintained emotional control and refused to react the way she expected, you created a kind of psychological pressure that most people don't even realize exists. Human beings are deeply conditioned to expect emotional feedback. When someone pulls away, the instinctive response is to chase, explain, defend, or demand clarity. That reaction gives the other person reassurance that they still matter, that they still have influence. By not reacting, you removed that reassurance completely, and that absence is what starts to weigh on her mind. Emotional control is unsettling because it cannot be easily read or predicted. She may have expected anger, sadness, frustration, or attempts to reconnect. Any of those reactions would have given her a clear emotional signal to respond to. Instead, she was met with calm, neutrality, and silence. That creates a vacuum, and the mind hates a vacuum. When there is no external emotional data, the brain fills in the gaps with assumptions, projections, and fears. That you're spiraling not because of anything you said, but because of what you didn't say. What intensifies this pressure is the sudden shift in the power dynamic. Emotional power doesn't come from who cares less, but from who can remain centered when things feel uncertain. You demonstrated that you can sit comfortably in discomfort without trying to control the outcome. That communicates abundance. It suggests that your happiness, confidence, and identity are not tied to one person's response. Whether she consciously recognizes it or not, she feels that you are emotionally self-sufficient. That alone raises your perceived value. When someone realizes they can no longer influence your emotions, it triggers insecurity. She may begin questioning whether she still matters to you, not because you said anything, but because you didn't rush to prove that she does. This challenges her sense of leverage. If she believed she could pull away and you would chase, your calm response breaks that belief. Suddenly, she's no longer certain where she stands. That uncertainty becomes pressure because it threatens the emotional advantage she thought she had. Your emotional control also forces her to confront her own feelings. When you react emotionally, the focus stays on your behavior. When you don't, the focus turns inward. She begins asking herself why she's thinking about you, why your silence bothers her, and why she feels unsettled despite being the one who expected distance. This inward reflection is uncomfortable, but it's also where emotional attachment grows. She can't blame your actions because there are none to analyze. All that's left is her emotional response. Another layer of pressure comes from the contrast between expectation and reality. She expected time and silence to weaken the connection. Instead, it exposed her emotional dependence on your reactions. Your lack of response didn't make you disappear, it made you more present in her thoughts. That contradiction creates cognitive dissonance. Her mind struggles to reconcile why she feels affected when, logically, she believes she shouldn't. The more she tries to rationalize it, the more emotionally invested she becomes. Your composure also communicates emotional leadership. You're not letting circumstances dictate your behavior. You're responding from a place of internal stability rather than emotional impulse. This is rare. Most people seek relief through expression. You found strength in restraint. That difference is felt on a subconscious level. Emotional leadership creates safety, and safety mixed with uncertainty is deeply compelling. She senses that you're grounded, not reactive, and that makes her question her assumptions about you. There's also an unspoken message in your silence. You don't negotiate attraction. You don't plead for clarity or force conversations when the energy isn't right. That boundary creates pressure because it eliminates easy access. When access is limited, value increases. She may not like the feeling, but she respects it. And respect combined with unresolved emotion is what keeps her thinking, replaying, and wondering. Most importantly, your emotional control prevents her from closing the emotional loop. People seek resolution. They want clarity, closure, and certainty. Your calm non-reaction denies that closure. There's no argument to resolve, no final conversation to process, no emotional release. The story remains unfinished. Unfinished emotional stories linger. They occupy mental space long after logical interest should have faded. In the end, the pressure you created wasn't aggressive or intentional. It was the natural result of emotional strength. You didn't withdraw to punish or manipulate. You simply refused to abandon yourself for comfort. That's what makes it so powerful. Her mind can't handle it because emotional control removes predictability, challenges leverage, and forces introspection. And introspection is where attraction quietly grows without effort, without words, and without you ever having to chase. When you stopped showing up the way you used to, her mind didn't move on. It went backward. Absence has a strange effect on emotional memory. Without new interactions to dilute old feelings, the past becomes louder. Moments that once felt ordinary suddenly gain emotional weight. Conversations replay differently. Small gestures feel bigger in hindsight. Your silence doesn't erase the bond. It freezes it in time, and frozen emotions don't fade, they echo. What most people misunderstand is that emotional attachment doesn't require constant contact. In fact, constant contact often weakens it. Familiarity dulls intensity. When you removed yourself, you removed the noise, and in that quiet, her mind began to fill the space with memories. Not neutral memories, but emotionally charged ones. The human brain prioritizes emotional recall over logical recall. She doesn't remember every detail of what you said. She remembers how she felt around you, and feelings don't need permission to resurface. Without your presence, her imagination takes control. Imagination is far more powerful than reality because it idealizes. It smooths out flaws, amplifies positives, and edits out conflict. When you're not there to remind her of the ordinary or the inconvenient, her mind creates a version of you based on emotional peaks. Laughter feels warmer, chemistry feels stronger, the connection feels deeper than it did in real time. This is why absence often intensifies desire instead of killing it. Another reason her mind fixates is unresolved emotional tension. When things don't end cleanly, when there's no final conversation, no emotional release, the brain keeps searching for resolution. Your silence denies that resolution. There's no conclusion for her to accept, no emotional period at the end of the sentence. So her mind keeps revisiting the story, trying to understand it from different angles. Every replay strengthens the emotional imprint rather than dissolving it. Your absence also forces contrast. When you were present, your attention may have felt steady, even predictable. Once it disappeared, she felt the difference immediately. Humans are wired to notice loss more sharply than presence. The emotional gap you left behind becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly, what she once had easy access to now feels distant. That shift creates longing, not because you demanded it, but because you allowed her to feel the absence fully. There's also an identity component involved. When someone becomes part of your emotional routine, their removal disrupts more than feelings. It disrupts self-perception. She may begin questioning what changed, not just about you, but about herself. Was she wrong about the connection? Did she miscalculate her importance to you? Those questions pull you deeper into her thoughts. You become a reference point in her internal dialogue, even without participating in it. As time passes, emotional memory begins to soften the edges. Frustrations fade faster than positive feelings. This isn't romantic fantasy, it's how memory works. The brain preserves emotional highlights and discards discomfort unless it's reinforced. Since you're no longer there to reinforce tension, what remains are emotional highs and unspoken potential. The bond begins to feel unfinished, and unfinished bonds are emotionally magnetic. Your silence also gives her emotional ownership. When you're actively engaging, you're carrying part of the emotional load. When you step back, she carries it alone. Every feeling she experiences happens without your input, which makes it feel more personal and more real. She can't attribute her emotions to something you said or did recently. She has to acknowledge that the feelings are coming from within her. That internal ownership deepens attachment. What makes this especially powerful is that you didn't try to trigger these emotions. You didn't remind her of the past. You didn't reach out just to check in. You let memory do the work. That restraint is what allows nostalgia to grow organically. Forced reminders feel manipulative. Natural absence feels authentic. She senses that you're not trying to pull her back, and that makes the emotional pull stronger. The longer the silence continues, the more symbolic it becomes. You're no longer just a person she knew. You become a feeling she hasn't resolved, and feelings seek expression. Her mind keeps circling back, not because she's weak, but because emotional bonds don't dissolve on command. They dissolve through closure, and closure requires engagement, which you denied by staying centered and absent. In the end, your absence didn't make her forget, it made her remember. It didn't erase the bond, it isolated it, intensified it, and gave it room to grow without interference. Her mind can't let go because there's nothing to let go of, only something unresolved, unspoken, and emotionally alive. And that's the quiet power of absence. It turns memory into attachment, silence into presence, and distance into emotional gravity. Maintaining your silence and staying centered throughout her unpredictability communicates something far deeper than words ever could. It's one thing to step back for a moment, but it's another to consistently embody composure, self-respect, and emotional independence. That consistency tells her, without a single word, that your life is bigger than any one relationship or interaction. You're not reacting to her whims, nor are you waiting for her validation. You're living fully, focused on your purpose, and that energy is palpable. When a man demonstrates that level of centeredness, it creates an almost magnetic attraction because it signals stability, confidence, and leadership, qualities that are universally respected and desired. Staying silent while remaining emotionally present in your own life separates you from the majority of men, who often allow their worth to be dictated by the reactions of others. Most men would feel compelled to explain themselves, apologize excessively, or try to fix a situation to regain attention. You didn't. That difference is profound because it demonstrates control over your emotions rather than letting emotions control you. Women, like all humans, are subconsciously drawn to those who can remain composed in uncertain or uncomfortable situations. Emotional composure is a sign of inner strength, and inner strength is attractive in ways that words alone cannot achieve. This kind of centeredness also communicates boundaries without ever explicitly stating them. You're showing through your behavior that access to your attention, time, and energy is valuable. You're not punishing or playing games, you're simply protecting your own well-being and maintaining integrity. Boundaries create respect, and respect is the foundation for genuine attraction. When she realizes that you're not easily swayed or manipulated, it forces her to adjust her perception of you. She begins to see you not just as someone she knows or has interacted with, but as someone who has self, possession, and control over his own life. Pauseful, because it transforms how she empiez a aligners age enng natural ages with hestia you mentally and emotionally. Her mind starts to notice patterns she hadn't considered before. The more consistent you are in your centeredness, the more she observes that you are not reactive. She sees that you do not chase, you do not plead, and you do not respond impulsively. Each instance of calm non-reaction builds a narrative in her mind about your character. This narrative is not one that can be fabricated by words. It must be earned through consistent action. She begins to internalize your strength and reliability, even if she cannot articulate it. It's a subtle form of influence that works on a subconscious level, compelling her to reflect on your value without you having to say anything at all. Emotional independence is another layer of this dynamic. By staying centered, you demonstrate that your happiness and confidence are not contingent on her behavior or attention. That is deeply attractive because it shows that you are complete on your own. When a man is emotionally self-sufficient, he removes the burden of making someone else responsible for his mood or worth. This allows interactions to occur from a place of genuine choice rather than neediness. She senses this independence, whether consciously or subconsciously, and it challenges her expectations. She may have anticipated that you would be upset, reactive, or desperate, but your calm presence disproves all of that. The unpredictability of your selfish stance creates intrigue and deepens attraction. Your consistency and centeredness also foster patience on her part. She begins to recognize that you are not easily manipulated and that your attention cannot be demanded. That awareness shifts her behavior. She may find herself thinking more carefully about her words, her actions, and her intentions because she recognizes that they have weight. In a sense, your quiet composure teaches her to value what she has access to, rather than assuming it will always be available. That lesson is internalized, not imposed, and that internalization makes it much more potent than external pressure ever could. Another critical effect of staying centered is the way it amplifies your presence without overt effort. You do not need to be dramatic, loud, or confrontational. Your energy communicates strength, and strength is felt even in silence. When she reflects on past interactions, she will notice the contrast between men who were reactive and unstable versus you, who remained grounded and composed. This contrast is what keeps you in her thoughts, because human brains are wired to notice difference, especially when that difference signals competence, stability, and security. Finally, staying silent and centered demonstrates authenticity. You are not pretending to be unaffected. You genuinely are. That authenticity is deeply compelling because it signals emotional integrity. People are naturally drawn to those who are genuine, and authenticity cannot be faked over time. Your composure shows that your focus is on your own growth, your own life, and your own purpose, rather than on external validation. That message resonates on a subconscious level, She feels the weight of your presence, the confidence in your independence, and the undeniable fact that your self-worth is intact. In the end, your calm silence and centeredness are not passive, they are powerful. They demonstrate that your life is rich and fulfilling regardless of external circumstances. They communicate value without a word. They demand respect through action, not argument. And they create an emotional pull that is far stronger than chasing or pleading ever could. By staying grounded, you do not just influence her thoughts. You influence her perception of what a strong, confident, and self-possessed man truly is. This is the ultimate demonstration of attraction. It is earned through composure, integrity, and inner strength, not through effort or persuasion.